Elections are over, at least for the year 2024, so political parties are recalibrating for more relevance in the coming year. At the state and national levels, and clamor for a single term for the president is not going away in some quarters. What are the issues for and against this move? Plus, push against gender-based violence gets legislative backing. Also on political update today, how are the local government authorities doing now that the financial autonomy has come to stay? We have these and more on our lineup. I'm Fisayo Ogunfuyi. Welcome. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, has led a symbolic walk against gender-based violence in commemoration of this year's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The walk brought together hundreds of participants, including lawmakers and members of the public who marched from the National Assembly to the headquarters of the Nigerian Police Force. Speaker Abbas says it demonstrates the resolve of the National Assembly to demand decisive action to safeguard vulnerable populations and ensure accountability for perpetrators of gender-based violence. The demonstration of solidarity with victims of gender-based violence in the country culminated in the submission of a petition by the House of Representatives to the Inspector General of Police.
It's categorically clear here that the National Assembly will do everything humanly possible to ensure that all forms of violence against women and girls are drastically reduced, if not completely eliminated, in the very near future.
We want to get justice. The House of Representatives, under the leadership of Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas and Right Honorable Benjamin Kalu, have united in one voice to say that there is no excuse for violence against our women and our girls.
It is a collective effort that we must all fight. We must all come together and put our actions together to eradicate this unacceptable reality.
The 34 lawmakers who sponsored the 6-year single-term presidency constitutional amendment bill have resolved to reintroduce the bill despite the rejection on the floor of the House of Representatives. Spokesperson for the sponsors, Ugochinyere Ikeaguonu, stated this in a reaction to the rejection of the Constitution Alteration Bill. The bill was defeated with a voice vote and without a debate on the floor of the House Thursday.
Of reintroducing it after following due legislative procedures and timelines. But all I can tell Nigerians is that be rest assured that we'll continue the advocacy and the legislative efforts to ensure that we'll convince our colleagues to see the reasons why we should have a 6-year single-term presidency and for power to rotate between North and South and for all elections to be held in one day.
The People's Democratic Party, PDP's Governors Forum, is calling on the federal government to urgently review the microeconomic and fiscal policies to address the welfare of Nigerians. This is contained in the 8-point communique issued after its 2-day meeting in Jos, Plateau State.
In attendance were members of the Working Committee of the Party, Board of Trustees, National Assembly Forum, and former Ministers Forum.
The Forum wishes to pledge that all PDP governors will continue to aggressively pursue policies and programs that will reduce the hardship and ensure progress and development.
It resolved to suspend the next meeting of the party to honor one of their members, the governor of Akwa Ibom State, whose wife will be buried on the same day earlier agreed by the meeting. It therefore advised the National Working Committee of the party to call for next meeting latest the first week of February 2025. The forum further commiserated with the government and people of Plateau State over the Laranto Katako Market Inferno and the government and people of Jigawa State over the tanker explosion where many lives were lost.
Talking about parties and opportunities to recalibrate, that we'll be seeing that in the course of the program. Now that the electioneering season is over, political parties seem to be recalibrating, well, for greater relevance in the coming year. Many say there should be no lull in the interaction with the people. Director General Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC Chinedu Obi, joins us now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You've been quite busy this past months and had public engagements as well. Now that there's a relative calm in the political parties in terms of engagement, I mean, in terms of, elections, what is expected of them? Because it seems to me as if it's a festival of elections, and when we have elections, there's a frenzy. And after that, it seems to be a lull.
It's completely not true. Yes, the election season have come and gone with the end of election in Edo and Ondo. Of course, in between, we had elections across states, the ones conducted by the State Independent Electoral Commission. That's correct, but there's no break.
I'm not talking about your, IPAC as a body. I'm talking about political parties in general.
Totally.
Apart from, we see a lot of momentum and frenzy towards elections. But there's some public engagements I expect, especially in other climes. Are you galvanizing them towards some of these actions so that perhaps at least the citizens would appreciate the differences within these parties in terms of ideology, and the recruiting system will be still seamless?
I understand your question clearly. What I was saying is that beyond the election is that IPAC and political parties, when we say IPAC, we mean all the parties. There are 19 of us, either as political parties individually or as IPAC, come up with other programs other than the normal election. Of course, you realize that recently we were involved in Electoral Act amendment, meeting with loopholes we've had in the last election, and to look forward to how we can get better election. Of course, with some other agencies, the Kuka Foundation, WFV, and so on, we have also been involved in discussions around party ideology, structures of party. There's things we're doing around the political system that also helps to keep us going, not just only election. We also discussed about sustainability. We talk about structures of our party, ideologies, and all that.
All right, let's look at, maybe not some of the bigger parties. We saw in the Edo election and the performance of, these political parties. It seems to me as if it's still the usual suspects we see in terms of, engagements with the people. How do you expect perhaps the so-called smaller parties to grow? Are there some discussions in terms of recalibration, in terms of re-advertising themselves to the people and not just coming forward for elections? And in some cases, they don't even eventually get to the podium. They end up endorsing some other candidates.
I don't agree with the concept of smaller parties. All parties are the same, and of course, if you agree with me, in the last election, very well, in the last election, anybody would have seen Labour Party as the so-called small parties. But of course, with the involvement of people like P2B, you saw what happened eventually. I think the case is that you have parties that have access to government money that seem to be the ones on the forefront. All the other parties do their activities, maybe not as visible as the other one, because of course you know that politics requires money, it requires campaign, it requires activities. That is not to say that these parties are not doing things in their own way. So it's not necessarily about what PDP and APC does. The parties are working. As we speak now, some parties are doing some level of congresses at the polling unit level, ward level, local government level, and so on. They have different meetings around how they sustain their party, how they win new members. Because sometimes they're not always in the news, which ideally should be, you don't see the impact they make. Again, is that sometimes the media seem to be more, if you like, they seem to tend more towards reporting stories around the PDP and APC, apparently because they are the ones that can, you know what I mean?
I don't know what you mean, but let's move on, on the program. We have always said that, parties should just come forward with their programs, and from our end here, as the Nigerian Television Authority, we would, give you the necessary coverage we need, because Nigerians really need to know exactly what you have in store for them, not just around electoral cycles. Now, we've seen, 2 elections in the past 3 months, Edo and Ondo State. Apart from the performance of the political parties in these elections, in terms of public engagement, are they growing? In terms of even understanding the general yearnings of the people and engaging them at that level, not just for the candidate, but for the party, so that the interaction between the populace and these parties would not just end with the election cycles?
I agree with you. Generally, we've had apathy due to the previous experiences lots of Nigerians have with the conduct of elections. Many feel that the elections don't reflect exactly what they voted in the recent of it. So that has actually reduced that consciousness of the people. But the truth is that there are engagements, obviously not in the way it should be, in the real sense of it, but whether there are engagements, there are certain engagements happening at the different levels. The turnout, if you notice the result of the elections in almost all the states, you've had people complain about the process. The turnout is often not commensurate with the persons that registered within the election. So you still have this issue of people not believing in the system, and which is actually where our work is, to ensure that Nigerians begin to believe in the electoral process. For as long as we still have a case where elections are conducted and people feel that it didn't reflect what they had in mind, you're likely to still have this kind of situation.
All right, let's go to issues of ideology. Are there clear, sharp, differences in the ideology that the political parties are presenting? I understand that, your body is also trying to build up some body of work and some academic, efforts around even on, presenting some things to Nigerians. But in terms of at least some of these your interactions, are there sharp differences in terms of the proposals being given to Nigerians?
Truth is that all political parties have ideology. One of the first things you submit to INEC is your constitution, your manifesto, your ideology. These are the preconditions to registering your political party. And of course, if you look at almost all the parties, almost every party drew its constitution and ideology from the second schedule of the constitution, where you have the principle of state policy. The thing is that because over time, I am one of these, I'm not speaking for IPAC now, I'm speaking for myself. I'm one of those people that believe that there's more or less like what you call a state hijack, where certain persons without any ideology other than wanting to be in power have taken over the system, and you can no longer see a clear-cut ideology. But for some parties, if you look clearly, maybe not among the two ones you see often, you see some parties that have core ideologies that you can relate with. It probably would not have been like you can find in Western democracies like the one of the US. It would be difficult for someone who is a Republican to quickly overnight switch over to being a Democrat. But unlike what we have here, where someone can be a member of the PDP in the morning and by evening of that same day is a member of the APC. We have that challenge. But obviously, every political party has its own ideology, apart from these other ones that I consider those that have hijacked the state, and the ideology is not basically the consideration.
All right, for the parties receiving new entrants, perhaps because of frustrated ambitions in other political parties, and they are getting new intakes, shouldn't there be some kind of period of grooming into their thinking before they are perhaps presented as candidates, for instance, at the expense of those who have been in those parties for a while, especially, let's not use the word smaller parties, in other parties, apart from some of these, big ones, in terms of, when you have somebody who wants to go for some top positions, especially, maybe governorship and all that, gets himself frustrated at the recruitment level earlier in the game, and then quickly jumps into some other parties, and somehow, still gets himself on the podium. Should there be some discussion in terms of orientation, grooming before you put them on the podium? Since in terms of complexion, those people have not particularly changed in their outlook to life once they change their platforms.
Well, that's part of the triggers that make one think that parties seem not to have ideology. I think that is a misnomer. Ideally, people should know and get themselves acquainted with what their party stands for, and when they're coming to want to show themselves to be part of the party, they should be able to imbibe it. But that someone loses in one political party and he jumps into the other one the next day also show clearly that what such persons are interested in is just to grab power and not necessarily to market the idea of their party. And which is why, if you notice, today, most persons who find themselves either as governors, House of Assembly, or in the National Assembly tend to disconnect from their party. There seems to be the executive feeling that the party is their own worldview. And sometimes you find that even their own programs move away completely from what the party has as its own ideology. So for me, I think it's not a proper thing, and it's something maybe political parties will need to walk through to be sure that persons who fly their flag get orientated with the vision and ideologies of their party, so that when, for instance, they get elected, they're able to deliver to the people what they have promised to Nigerians.
All right, let's move on very quickly and look at some issues, even in the political sphere. The leadership of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, says the revival of the party will soon be a clear-cut thing, because we would be seeing that because of the training and research arm of the party, which is long overdue, stressing that the party must be built on ideas before anyone can start discussing the 2027 general elections. This is as a coalition of the PDP intellectuals worldwide, however, takes a different position as it prefers a clear-cut solution for the party's return to its old winning ways.
Well, I think
from the National Working Committee of the PDP to some of its organs, the People's Democratic Institute, they believe, will further propel PDP and help showcase what the party stands for.
The PDI is a very important and integral part of our party that is poised to contribute towards the development of our party, its policies and ideologies, as well as promoting the democratic ethos in Nigeria and in Africa.
As we approach 2027, and by revitalizing the PDI, that real hope is being provided for our people.
Let us move away from building ideas on self, on ambition. We cannot have an ambition if we don't have a party. We cannot have a party if we don't have ideas. This is where it starts from.
However, to reposition the PDP and return it to its old winning days, a coalition of PDP intellectuals worldwide at a media briefing in Abuja noted that the party must zone 2027 presidency to the south, believing that it will go a long way to unite the party through equity, fairness, and justice.
As we build up to 2027, we are staunchly warning the leaders of our party that this time we must put party interests first and above all. We must return party to the southern part of this country.
Members emphasized that there are competent and dedicated PDP men and women who can effectively run the affairs of the country and make Nigeria better.
As for the PDP, meanwhile, a new book reflecting on the 2023 Nigerian presidential election and the subsequent emergence of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has captured the attention of political observers with its attempt to clear the air on some misconceptions. The book, titled Personal Reflection on the 2023 presidential election, was officially launched at the State House in Abuja in a ceremony attended by political leaders, scholars, and journalists.
Intellectual discourse and celebration of the strides of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, with speakers applauding the book's ability to break down the complexity of the 2023 elections. The author says he was moved to delve into the research as a result of some dissenting voices after the election, adding that it was a well-deserved victory for President Tinubu.
The shout of those who lost the election was more than the winner. So it was like a subdued celebration from the winning party. So I was just like, what could have caused it? Despite the subdued celebration, the election was won fair and square. The president's victory was deserved.
So by the time you begin to study our dear president, you will understand that this is a go-getter. Remember that when he came out to run for this particular election, Nobody gave him a chance.
Political leaders at the event did not merely reflect on the election itself, but offered a glimpse into what Nigeria should expect under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu.
As a professional banker, I know very well if any other person other than President Tinubu that inherited the portfolio of Nigeria, it would have been very difficult. I wouldn't imagine the situation would be in today.
I never shied away from confirming to Nigerians that he's going to put in his level best to ensure that their problems are reduced, their sufferings are ameliorated, and our economy gets to the recovery.
The president is trying. I can see he's all over the world looking for foreign investors, trying everything. But you see, Rome was not built in a day.
As the event concluded, the gathering expressed no doubt that the Tinubu-led administration is on the right path to economic prosperity, while urging Nigerians to support the administration to deliver the desired results.
All right, parties reflecting some, recalibrating for greater relevance, and we still have the Director General of IPAC, that's Inter-Party Advisory Council. Let's just, look at a few things, not just from personal. Let's look at the umpire. You've had the handshake with the umpire, engagement with the umpire. 2 elections have gone now, off-season elections, Edo and Ondo. What's your scorecard in terms of interaction with them, and what exactly do you want the election management body to do further to perhaps even foster better confidence from the people?
Well, as an institution, INEC is doing its best, but it can do better than it's done so far. We still believe that total deployment of ICT will be able to help, and because each time we keep relying on ad hoc staff, persons you recruit some days to the election and you vest them with responsibilities, you might see a disconnect between what INEC designed in terms of what it wants to do with the output. But we think if we now have a total deployment of ICT in our elections, the issue of discretion, issue of what anybody thinks would get away. Again, I also think that we need to also deal with the issue of logistics, because logistics has also been one of the issues. You find out that in some of the polling units, you find out that they don't have materials get to polling units at the
testing
right
some of this, this concept. Of course, we understand, like just what you spoke about concept and actuality, not particularly agreeing because of the kind of staff deployed for this. But in terms of the workability as well, ICT and its vulnerabilities, especially with what we've seen in other climes that are even more adept than us in terms of deployment of ICT, and how that could also be subverted. Would that not perhaps also be something to tread carefully about?
Every program, every idea has its challenges. All you need to do is find solutions to the challenge. The truth is that if you look at this comparison you're trying to make, a manual process cannot be compared to an ICT-driven process. The efficiency is higher. The result is more likely to give you the output rather than where you now rely on what human beings think. So for me, ICT is still the best. It may come with these issues. I want us to focus on how do we deal with such issues. Even in climes you're talking about, they still use ICT. We can do a combination. Those critical areas that we know. Look at the issue of coalition. In Edo, you saw a situation where some excuses were made as to why coalition didn't happen at the ward.
At a certain center.
Correct. So, but if it was ICT driven, all you just need to do is impute the whole thing, and at the end, at the back end, you get the output. So for me, if INEC deploys ICT,
completely
absolutely correct, sir. If INEC can deploy ICT, that will go a very long way. Another thing which IPAC has also advocated, it was part of what we submitted to National Assembly to see if we can fit it into the next constitutional amendment, is to take away the appointment of the umpire from the executive. We have made this clear. That will also help to create at some level of integrity and unbiased umpire.
Perhaps the name independent can truly be
That's
reflected.
when you can have absolutely what you call independence.
Many thanks to our guest today. General Bodobi is the Director General of the Inter-Party Advisory Council. We'll still continue with this conversation before the end of the year, and we'll be looking at next year's calendar and the elections that we'll have at that time, and of course what the parties are doing to deepen discussions with Nigerians in advertising their credentials and perhaps also discouraging cross-carpeting, which has now become some kind of soap opera in the political space. Thank you very much for being a part of it. We'll be back again on Friday. Between now and then, play your politics for the greater good and keep it locked on Africa's Finest and Best, the Nigerian Television Authority, for news, reviews, previews, and interviews. Bye-bye now.